Hi, my name is Judith Muir. I'm from Hazelton, and I'm from the Gitxsan-Wet'suwet'en territories. And my role at VCIT is an elder at the gathering place. And today I'm sharing a fry bread recipe that my geeks shared with me. It is important to remind you that Indigenous people are very diverse. You may have been taught a similar but slightly different recipe than mine. Okay, let's start. In here, we have 4 cups of white flour, 2 tablespoons sugar, 1 tablespoon salt, and in here 2 tablespoons of yeast. And I'm going to add that to 1 cup of milk with 2 tablespoons of shortening. And we're going to stir that until it blooms. And to that I'm adding some more sugar, 2 tablespoons of sugar, to speed it up a bit. And once that blooms, we can add it to the flour, salt, and sugar. Okay, I need to make sure it's all mixed up properly. This bread my grandmother used to make. She used to make it every time she had people come over, or whenever we all came over for dinner, and she'd serve it with jam, peanut butter, carob syrup, or butter, and of course dark black tea, cold tea. This is something that we still make and we still share. Something that for a feast we'd make about 200 pieces to as a contribution to our share in the feast. And it's a popular thing, they still do it to this day. And there's a lot of different variations of this. There's also a baking powder one that you do with baking powder that the hunters and trappers used to use because it was simple and easy to carry, with flour, salt, and water. And they would just mix it up into a dough, wrap it around the sticks, and cook it over the campfire so they have bread to eat while they're traveling, because it was easy to carry. And that's something that my grandparents used to also do, and that they also showed me. But that's pretty much all I know about this so far. And this is almost to the point, not quite yet. When the yeast is blooming, then it'll be ready to go into here. I don't really have anything else to say right now.
Who did your grandmother make her bread for? Who did your grandmother make her bread for?
For family and for her visitors. And she used to also make baking powder Indian wedding cake, I think it was called, with wild blueberries, which is made of baking powder bread, but with more sugar in it.
Do you remember making bread with your grandmother?
Yeah, I love doing that. But she's always telling me to go away, like, Yinda. Because she didn't like to be bothered. But I used to like learning from her. She used to teach me a lot of different things. I wish she was still here, because there was a lot of things that I wanted to learn more about, because we used to go for walks, and she'd show me that out in the wilderness you can never starve. There's so much out there to eat. Things that you would walk by and not even think anything about. She showed me wild tea, wild oats, wild cranberries, wild strawberries, I think wild onions. And she used to make go and gather these things when we go on our walks. And she's also hunt rabbits, which was kind of funny because she lived next to us and off the reserve. So people used to look at her funny because she would go out with her snare traps to go and get rabbits, and then make a fire in the backyard to cook her rabbits. And I didn't want to eat any. But that's one of the things I remembered. But yeah, there's a lot of things that I wish that I had time to learn. She was too old and I was too young, and now that most of the elders are gone, so I'm hoping to go back home and learn some more from people that are still there.
Did she ever take the wild berries and add them to her bread? Or was it just a traditional standard bread recipe that she would make?
She told me that they used to mash it down and dry it out so they can travel with it. So they can have berries and with their meat when they're hunting and camping. But yeah, she liked to just put it as a topping on that you dip your bread in, like a jam. But she had arthritis, so she couldn't do a lot of those things anymore.
When she was younger, did she make bread every day?
Yeah, she had this big cardboard bin with from some Japanese, I don't know what she got in it, and it had a ring around it, and you unsnapped it, and she stored all her bread in there, baking powder bread. She'd make a ton of bread, not like the batch I'm making today, but it was enough to last us for like a week, and it was stored in a cool, dark place. So she was pretty resourceful. She had to be. In her house, when I remember visiting her, there was no running water, no electricity. She had to chop wood to cook, and then she had to chop wood for the heating, the wood stove in the living room. So everything was difficult. So for her, it was a learning experience every time she did something.
Mm-hmm. So you said that she wouldn't make a batch this, I guess, of this size? So
This small, she would laugh if she saw how much this little batch I'm making.
So how many pieces do you think you'll get out of this batch?
Probably about 16 pieces.
And how many pieces would she make and what at one time?
I don't know. She always chased me away.
No, so you didn't
She'd bring the plate into the kitchen, but the cooking stove was in the other room, and she didn't want me to get burnt, so I wasn't allowed in there. I think I was only about 4 or 5 then.
And I bet the stove was a little different than this one, right?
Oh God, it was huge. It was a cast iron stove.
Was it a wood stove?
Wood heating stove. That was the only way. Oh. They used to have a horse that they used to take out into the woods to go get the wood, and then they had a wagon that the horse would pull, and then they'd bring the wood back and chop it, and they'd have a big stack for the whole, all seasons, I think.
Wow.
And the water, there was a communal water pump that we had to go get buckets of water from. That was our job. And we used to speak our language fluently when we were young, because she didn't speak English.
Makes sense.
The way she grew up, I think they were hiding in the bush. They wouldn't get taken away and not be moved. So they lived out in the woods a lot, and that's where she learned all her skills. Trapping and skinning animals and stuff like that, and all the wild food that she knew about.
So in this recipe, you are using milk.
Mm-hmm.
Did she use cow's milk as well, or what did she use for?
She just used lard and water because she was lactose intolerant. A lot of people were, but I was raised off the reserve, and I guess I grew up drinking milk, so I wasn't lactose intolerant, and I didn't know about that until years later when my family came over and I made baked salmon with the milk sauce. And then they told me they couldn't eat it. And that's when I found out.
So okay. You're mixing the milk now into the flour?
Yeah, with the yeast and the sugar. Okay, so you just mix it in. Just have to make sure the temperature is not too hot. You don't want the bread to be heavy.
So the temperature, of the milk, if it's too hot, makes the bread heavier?
Yes, so the yeast won't rise as much as it should.
I see.
And if you find that it's not coming together enough, you just add a bit more water, which I think I might have to do. You add it until you get the right proper consistency, but you don't want to add too much. You don't want it too sticky. You want it to come together and away from the sides of the bowl. Smells good. And this recipe you can use for a lot of different things. I also use it for cinnamon buns or
Is that cold water you're adding?
it's lukewarm. I just want it to come together so that it comes away from the sides of the bowl. I can't imagine my grandmother doing a huge batch of this.
Yes.
It can be hard on the arms.
You need strong arms.
Yeah. And she never did it from a recipe either. She did it from her head. So I used to ask her, I go, well, how do you make it? And then she'd just go a handful of this, and then you pour this much in, and a handful of that, and a little bit of this, and that's how she would try to tell me how to make it. So I had to watch. Okay.
And that's just flour, right?
Yeah, that's just flour, so to get it away from the sides of the bowl from sticking to my hand. So I'll continue kneading this, and it's coming away from the sides of the bowl. So there's nothing on the sides of the bowl. So now you know you're getting to that point where you can put it aside to rise. This is the fun part that my grandmother used to let me do. punching, knead the bread for her. So that you get all the air bubbles out, nice and soft. Okay, I think we're at that point where the bread can take a rest and rise to double its size. And I think that's good. But before I put it to rest, I have to grease the bowl.
Do you use the same bowl?
Yeah,
Or-
I do. Where's my spoon? Just take some of the cooking lard out. Just rub it all over in the bowl, so it won't stick. It'll just rise. Okay, that's done.
So to let it rise, traditionally you would move the bowl to a warm place in your kitchen.
Yeah, I cover it with a towel, a damp towel, so it's got moisture, and so it stays warm. And
it takes approximately how long to double in size?
it depends how warm it is. Probably an hour, but we're lucky. Here we have a proofer, which we're lucky to have because it cuts the proofing time way down. Where it is? Okay. Oh, I had it there. Start. There. So we'll take a short break and we will come back and continue with the making of the fried bread and more stories and whatever else we can think of.
All right. We will be back.